지금부터 클라우스 슈밥 세계경제포럼 회장 초청 제4차 산업혁명 특별대담회를 시작하겠습니다. 안녕하십니까? 저는 사회를 맡은 한국전력공사 안선미입니다. 먼저 오늘 특별대담회에 참석해 주신 여러분, 그리고 인터넷 생중계로 함께해 주시는 모든 분들께 감사의 말씀 드립니다. 지난 상반기였죠. 전 세계인이 이목을 집중한 역사적인 승부가 있었습니다. 바로 인공지능 시대의 본격 개막을 알리는 신호탄이었던 알파고와 이세돌 구단의 대국이었습니다. 이에 더해서 자율주동차, 드론과 같은 무인 운송수단, 운동화와 피자를 찍어내는 3D 프린터 등의 새로운 과학 기술의 등장으로 파괴적 혁신은 이미 일상이 되어가고 있는 오늘날입니다. 이처럼 디지털, 물리적, 생물학적 영역 간 경계 붕괴와 상호 융합에 따른 경제사회 전반의 패러다임 변화를 의미하는 제4차 산업혁명은 앞으로 더 빠르고 더 넓고 더 강하게 우리의 세상을 변화시킬 전망인데요. 오늘 특별대담회는 이 시대의 뜨거운 화두인 제4차 산업혁명 이후 미래 모습과 한국 사회에 대한 시사점을 주제로 제4차 산업혁명의 흐름을 이해하고 변화의 선제적인 대응의 길을 모색하기 위해 마련된 자리입니다. 자, 그럼 한 발 앞선 해야드로 제4차 산업혁명에 대한 흥미로운 대담을 펼쳐주실 클라우스 슈밥 세계경제포럼 회장님과 정재승 카이스트 교수님을 소개해드리겠습니다. 먼저 뇌를 연구하는 물리학자 정재승 카이스트 교수님을 소개해드릴 순서인데요. 교수님께서는 인간의 가치를 높이는 과학을 위해서 깊이 있는 연구는 물론 다양한 저서와 강연을 통해서 폭넓은 소통에도 큰 노력을 기울이고 계십니다. 그럼 정재승 교수님을 먼저 무대로 모시겠습니다. 큰 박수 부탁드립니다. 네, 이어서 어렵게 모신 분을 소개해드릴 순서입니다. 클라우스 슈밥 세계경제포럼 회장님을 소개해드릴 순서인데요. 클라우스 슈밥 회장님께서는 전 세계 정치, 경제, 사회 문제 해결을 위한 각국 리더들의 의견 공유의 장인 세계경제포럼을 창립하시고 미래를 내다보는 뛰어난 통찰력으로 45년간 세계경제포럼을 이끌어오고 계십니다. 특히 오늘날 제4차 산업혁명의 논의의 출발점이 된 저서 제4차 산업혁명의 저자이십니다. 자, 그럼 클라우스 슈밥 회장님을 무대로 모시겠습니다. 큰 박수로 환영해 주십시오.
안녕하세요. 카이스트 정재승입니다. 이런 귀한 자리에 와주셔서 감사드리고요. 또 클라우스 슈밥 회장님과 이렇게 대화를 할 수 있어서 기쁘게 생각합니다. 아까 소개 말씀에서 잘 들으셨듯이 올해 한국은 테크놀로지와 관련돼서 굉장히 급변하는 경험들을 하고 있습니다. 이세돌과 알파고의 세계의 대결이 한국에 있었고요. 그래서 인공지능의 최전선이 지금 어느 정도까지 와 있는가를 온 사회가 목격을 했습니다. 특히 그러면서 올해 초 다보스 포럼에서 제4차 산업혁명이 선언이 되면서 올해 가장 중요한 화두가 제4차 산업혁명이 아닌가 싶습니다. 저는 이제 다보스 포럼과 그 영 글로벌 리더스라는 이제 인연을 맺고 작년부터 제4차 산업혁명이 이제 올해 초에 다보스 포럼에서 선언이 될 건데 그 영 글로벌 리더들끼리 모여서 굉장히 많은 토론들을 하는 과정들을 지켜보게 됐습니다. 그래서 이 다보스 포럼에서 제4차 산업혁명을 선언하고 이것의 의미, 또 사회적인 가치 이런 것들을 가장 현장에서 잘 말씀해 주실 클라우스 슈밥 회장을 모시고 우리가 그 통찰을 나누는 그런 시간을 갖게 됐습니다. 클라우스 슈밥 회장 먼저 회장님이 소개를 좀 해주시고 또 많은 분들이 다보스 포럼 또 세계 경제 포럼에 대해서 잘 모르고 있기 때문에 거기에 관한 좀 소개를 해주시면 좀 좋을 것 같습니다. 인사도 좀 해주시고요.
Thank you very much, Professor Chang. And I'm pleased that the young global leader of the World Economic Forum is moderating this discussion. And before starting, I would like to express my appreciation to the hosts, President Cho of KEPCO, the publisher of the book, so I'm very pleased to be here. Actually, I have to disappoint you. It's not me who is sitting here. It is a copy produced by gene technology and additive printing. Of course, I'm joking, but what I'm just said might be possible in, I don't know, in a short time. But to respond to your question, the World Economic Forum is the world's foremost multi-stakeholder organization. We believe that the big challenges in the world cannot be solved by governments or by business or by civil society or by the young generation. It needs cooperative efforts. And the forum is a platform. Today, actually, it is recognized officially as an international organization to bring all stakeholders of global society together and to look at the big challenges of the future and to prepare solutions for those challenges. Last year, we recognized about 15 months ago that the fourth industrial revolution will be a force which will reshape not only business, society, but even us individuals. We also felt that the world is not sufficiently prepared for the fourth industrial revolution. And actually, just imagine, 1 year ago, practically nobody was speaking about the fourth industrial revolution. And when you read about self-driving cars or automatic traffic or three-dimensional printing, it all looked like futurology. Now, in the last 12 months, we have realized it's not futurology. It is reality. It will not go away. It's not a fate. So that's the reason why the World Economic Forum is very much engaged now to help governments, business, and society to prepare themselves for this fourth industrial revolution and the impact it will have on all of our lives.
뭐 작년에도 그랬고 올해 초에 다보스 포럼에서도 제4차 산업혁명에 관해서 이걸 정말 산업혁명이라고 부를 만한가에 관해서 굉장히 많은 토론이 있었습니다. 예를 들면 제3차 산업혁명을 디지털 혁명이라고 한다면 디지털 혁명, 디지털 IT 기술이 굉장히 다양한 분야, 심지어는 제조업 분야에까지 적용이 돼서 큰 변화를 이루는 것은 자연스러운 과학의 발전이라고 보이는데 이것을 그 이전과는 다른 제4차 산업혁명이라고 부르는 특별한 이유가 뭔지 다보스 포럼이 제4차 산업혁명을 선언한 그 배경을 좀 설명해 주십시오.
Yeah, with pleasure. It's not slightly different, it's substantially different. And let me explain. Let me go back into the history. Of course, the first industrial revolution was when we saw the invention of the steam engine. And the steam engine brought humankind the mechanization, the help of mechanical power to exercise certain human tasks.
네.
And then we had the second industrial revolution, which was mainly tied to the invention of electricity, but also the creation of mass production with the Ford T automobile. And then, of course, we had the third industrial revolution, which was the appearance of the computer, of the digital world. Now, some people would argue we are just now living in a kind of prolongation of the third industrial revolution. But actually, it's different. Because it's not only one invention. It's not just the digital development which we witness. It's a combination of many different innovations. I could start with big data, with artificial intelligence, with self-driving cars, with quantum computing, and so on and so on. Actually, in the book, I described over 20 different technologies. And all those technologies converge into new ways of application. If I take, for example, the combination of robots, of artificial intelligence, of big data, we can do things we never could do before. So the first difference is it's not just one innovation, it's a whole breadth of interrelated innovations. But there are other differences. The second difference with the third industrial revolution is the speed. I usually say this revolution is coming on us like, since I'm coming from Switzerland, like an avalanche coming down the mountain, or like a tsunami. 1 year ago, we just spoke about the possibility of self-driving cars. Some very few people have experienced a self-driving car. I experienced it for the first time 2 years ago. But now, when you are I was last week in Silicon Valley, so already, I mean, look at Tesla and so on. The technology is here. What we do not have yet is a regulatory framework. So it is the speed, it is the breadth, but there's another difference. This revolution is not a revolution about one product. It's a systems revolution. If you take, for example, Airbnb, or if you take Uber, Uber is not a new product. It's a new way how we consume products and services which have been in existence already before. So, with one idea, a whole system, the system of transportation may be changed. The fourth big difference is that this revolution is not only changing what we are doing. If you look back, the first three revolutions, they helped us to be more efficient, more productive. But this revolution is having a direct impact on us. You are a specialist, brain specialist. I'm just thinking of what you could do with in the area of brain research today. But let's also think when we look at this fourth difference, the impact on us. Just take you, the millennials, the people who have been born after 2000. You have a completely different understanding of privacy and transparency than we, the older generation, has. So, because the impact is so strong, so pervasive, it's changing us, it's changing our nature, it's changing our identity. And that creates also, to a certain extent, the fear many people have of the fourth industrial revolution, because they don't know yet what will be actually our life in 5 to 10 years to come.
뭐 다보스 포럼에서도 그런 얘기를 하셨고 책에서도 비슷한 얘기가 있습니다만 네. 제4차 산업혁명이 한때의 유행 혹은 그냥 짧은 트렌드가 아니라 굉장히 거대한 문명사적 흐름이 될 거다. 뭐 이런 것을 굉장히 많이 강조하셨는데요. 지금 하시는 말씀을 들어보니까 이게 일시적인 유행으로 끝나지 않고 우리 사회 전반에 그것도 시스템 레벨에서 영향을 굉장히 강력히 미칠 거라는 생각이 들기도 합니다.
Yes, it has become in many circles, in political circles sometimes, it has become very fashionable to speak about the fourth industrial revolution. But let me tell you, it's not a fate, because if something is fashionable, we have the feeling that it is something which is important now and which will fade away. But that's not the case with the fourth industrial revolution. If you look at the first industrial revolution, some people tried to stop it by destroying the steam engines, being afraid that steam engines would destroy jobs and human labor. But actually, it couldn't. So we cannot stop the force of innovation. We can channel the force of innovation, and we may talk about it later, but we cannot stop it. So we have two ways. The first one is to say, I'm very afraid, I don't like it, it changes too much my life, I don't know how it will look like at the end, so I develop a relatively defensive attitude. That's one way. There's the other way to say, it's here to stay. I have to embrace it. I have to base my future life on what's happening in the fourth industrial revolution. Otherwise, I will be moved outside of society or of business or whatever it is. It's very important to embrace and to cultivate the curiosity. And we are just at the beginning. I mean, this is also not something which will be with us for the next 3, 4, 5 years. It will be with us for many, many years to come.
제가 만약에 독일에 살고 있다면 제4차 산업혁명이 선언된 것이 그렇게 충격적이지 않을 것 같아요. 또 제가 만약에 실리콘밸리에서 일을 하고 있다면 뭐 제4차 산업혁명이 왔다라고 얘기해도 그게 별로 충격적이지 않을 것 같습니다. 근데 한국은 사실은 제4차 산업혁명이 아직 왔다고 보기는 어렵습니다. 이유는 지금 방금 말씀하신 그런 테크놀로지들이 잘 멀징이 되어 있지 않고요. 네, 특히 사물의 인터넷이 보편화가 되어 있지 않고 또 그런 빅데이터를 우리가 가지고 있지도 않고 플랫폼 비즈니스가 활성화되어 있지도 않고요. 인공지능이라든가 뭐 이런 제조업이 IT를 적극적으로 받아들이지 않고 있고 전통적인 방식으로 제조업이 굉장히 잘 그동안은 성장해 왔습니다. 근데 그런 관점에서 보자면 이제 제4차 산업혁명의 내용이 굉장히 낯설고 그리고 아직은 우리 사회에 오지 않았는데 앞으로 과연 올까? 혹은 온다면 언제쯤 올까? 막 그런 생각들 때문에 사람들이 지금 다보스 포럼에서 했던 제4차 산업혁명의 선언이 더 충격적으로 받아들여진 것 같습니다. 다시 말하면 나라마다 기술의 발전 또 그것이 사회에 미치는 영향의 온도 차이가 있는데 네, 이렇게 좀 뒤쫓아가는 그런 나라들의 상황에서 보자면 해주실 조언들이 좀 있습니까?
No, first, I do not think that there will be a different impact on different countries. I think the impact will be disruptive, revolutionary for each country. And it's now. It's not that in developing countries, let's say, this revolution will come only in 10, 15 years. But the impact will be of a different kind. To start with the developing countries, we should not forget that most of those countries do not even yet enjoy the benefits of the second and third revolution. For example, if I'm not mistaken, about 1.6 billion of people do not have access to electricity, or 4 billion, which was the second revolution, or 4 billion people do not have access to the internet yet. But on the other hand, the new technologies, mobile phones and so on, will allow those countries to leapfrog in many ways and to fill the gaps which the second and third revolution has left. For example, one of the features of the industrial revolution is decentralized electricity production, just to take one possibility. So it will be beneficial. It will not, people say, oh, the developing countries will suffer most. No, this revolution, I think, can help us to meet the objectives as put forward with the Sustainable Development Goals. Without new technologies, we could not meet those objectives. The same is true for the decisions of the Paris Conference, COP21, in terms of making our economy greener, reducing the carbon emissions. Also here, we need completely new technologies. But I take up your first point, where you made a difference between Silicon Valley, Germany, and Korea. Let me approach each of those countries in detail. When we talk about California, we have a situation where the US environment is relatively low in regulations. So companies are not restrained from the beginning on in their innovative capacity, in their technological development capabilities. Look at big data, the accumulation of data which some of the Silicon Valley companies could achieve would not have been possible in other countries. So in Germany and in Korea, you have probably many more regulations, which of course are an impediment to be really at the forefront of this revolution. Now, if I take Germany, the advantage of Germany is that it has recognized the need to transform its industry relatively soon. It didn't use the word fourth industrial revolution. It used the word Industry 0.4. I prefer, by the way, fourth industrial revolution because it's not only, this revolution is not only related to industry, it's society as a whole. So Germany has early recognized the need to transform its industry, and it has another advantage. Germany has a mixture of large companies and I would say mid-sized companies which are very innovative and very globally oriented. You have in Germany many companies which are market leaders, but which are relatively small companies producing some very specialized products. Now Korea, you have more the chaebol system with large companies. Korea is recognizing now, and I'm very impressed how well it is recognizing the need to prepare for the fourth industrial revolution. I had this morning the pleasure to talk to parliamentarians, to talk to the people from the legal system, and I see a strong national effort really to understand and to embrace the fourth industrial revolution. Now, I'm also very impressed. I have seen last year your institute, KAIST. I have had a discussion with our global shapers, young people between 20 and 30 here in Korea. I have visited the creative economy center here in Seoul. I'm very impressed by what is being done. But we have to look at the numbers. We have very good role models in Korea. But when my wife and I were in Shenzhen last summer, just 3 months ago, we heard there are about 1,000 companies which are created every day in Shenzhen. So there is a huge dynamism behind this, let's say, fourth industrial revolution, and you see, particularly in China, the government policy really to transform the industry. Now, Korea, I usually would say, with its industry structure, I would say in this fourth industrial revolution, we have to recognize that it is the fast fish which is eating the slow fish, and not anymore the large fish which is eating the small fish. Except, I come back to one exception. So what it means that even large companies have to reorganize themselves to be not giants, but to be, I would say, a flotilla of interconnected, small but very fast fishes. So coming back to this other issue, as far as industry is concerned, we don't speak necessarily about, I know Korea has a very traditional industry partially, but we don't speak about replacing all existing industries. What we are talking about is making existing industries more competitive by combining the traditional industry with the capabilities, let's say artificial intelligence, additive printing and so on, of the fourth industrial revolution. I said large companies have to become fast companies also. There is one other phenomenon of the fourth industrial revolution, and that's the phenomenon of, I would call them, platform enterprises. Those are companies which succeed to be the platform for many different services. Just take, I take Apple, not Samsung for the moment, but you have here a platform for thousands of different applications. So what makes a iPhone or a Galaxy, what makes it different from a traditional phone? It's not just that you use it as a phone, it's that you have access to many, many different services which are actually not provided by Apple or by whoever, but they are set on the platform of Apple. And of course, the best example is Uber, and I should say, Google particularly. Google is a huge platform company. So if big companies can succeed to become a platform, a global platform, as Apple, as Google, as Amazon, as Microsoft to a certain extent have achieved, then they dominate the world market. So there is a race today of large companies, not only in the digital field. If you take General Electric, if you take Siemens, and I don't know enough about Korean companies, but the whole objective is today to become a platform company.
What is one exception you want to mention?
The exception is large companies are normally disadvantaged if they do not become, and that's the exception, platform companies.
그 플랫폼 산업 이야기를 해서 조금 한국의 현실을 좀 말씀드려 보자면 저도 지금 슈밥 회장님이 말씀하신 것처럼 그 개발도상국, 지금 한참 개발이 진행되고 있는 나라와 선진국 사이에 차이가 있다고 생각되지는 않는데 기업들 중에서 먼저 진입한 기업들과 그렇지 않은 기업들 사이에 차이는 좀 존재하는 것 같습니다. 예를 들면 우리는 구글이나 페이스북 같은 플랫폼 사업을 하고 있는 회사들이 많지 않다 보니까 데이터 자체가 굉장히 부족하고요. 그 다음에 사물의 인터넷을 하려고 한다고 치면은 먼저 진입한 회사들이 글로벌 스탠다드를 만들어 놓기 때문에 뒤쫓아가는 회사 입장에서는 이제 그런 회사들의 기준을 따를 수밖에 없다거나 아니면 레귤레이션이 굉장히 엄격하고 변화가 느려서 빨리빨리 그걸 경험한 회사에 뒤쫓아가게 되는데 제4차 산업혁명의 제일 중요한 핵심은 그렇게 먼저 세상에 나가서 그 사회를 리딩하는 그런 회사가 좋은 결과들을 만들어내고 패스트 팔로워들이 좋은 결과를 만들어내기 힘든 사회로 점점 나아가는 게 아닌가 그런 생각이 좀 들거든요. 그래서 결국 시간이 지나고 나면 리딩 코퍼레이트하고 팔로잉 코퍼레이트 사이의 격차가 더 커지는 건 아닌가 그런 걱정도 되는데 거기에 대해서는 어떻게 생각하십니까?
It's the winners take it all. If you look at the old culture, you had a competitive advantage by producing products and services with higher productivity, with higher quality. That was the old way to compete. And of course, it left room to many companies. The competition of tomorrow is to be number one, to be first in innovation. Because people, let's look again at the iPhone market, whether Apple or Samsung. When you look, when people change from 5 to 6 or 6 to 7, they do not change so much because the product is nicer or the product is... No, people want to be part of innovation. They want to show off, I may say so, that they are at the forefront of innovation. So to be first, look at the race between the 2-7 models. It's just a very good example. Because who was first or who would be first would gain a lot of market share. So we will have a completely different kind of competition. It's also for countries. Those countries who, in the past, the World Economic Forum is publishing a report where we evaluate all countries in the world based on 200 different factors, and we have a certain measurement system to see how competitive they are. And Korea, in the last report, is at place 26. But in the future, I think innovation, creativity will be much higher weighted than all the rest, like macroeconomic stability, access to resources, and so on. So I sometimes have said, when we look at how should we call the ideology which was prevailing until now, we used to speak about capitalism, and capitalism, let's say, is based on heavy machinery and so on, on capital. The world of tomorrow, I wouldn't call it anymore if I had to choose a name for an ideology, I would say it's talentism and not anymore capitalism. The country which has the best talents will be the most successful country. The corporation who can attract the best talents will be the most successful corporation. But it's not only talents, it's the mixture of talents. I think diversity is very important. And here, gender parity is absolutely key. We have seen that companies who have gender parity are more successful and more innovative compared to companies who do not have really gender parity. So diversity plays a big role. That's, by the way, one of the reasons of the success, very often forgotten, apart from the university structure of Silicon Valley. It's such a diverse culture which you find. When I was just making a test, walking in the streets of San Francisco, where we opened, by the way, the forum opened last week, a center for the fourth industrial revolution, and we may come back later. But when you walk in the streets, you know, there's less than half of the population have white faces. And that's good. I think it gives this dynamism to the country. So my key point to your answer is, to your question is, the innovative capacity will be key for countries, for businesses, but also for individuals. And I would add one factor. It's flexibility. I think I see here many young people in the audience. I mean, even today already, just imagine 1/3 of the jobs in the US are what people call precarious, which means they are Uberized, they are jobs on demand, or they are threatened by the fourth industrial revolution. So, of course, we can regret it. Our old concept is, particularly also in this part of the world, is after you have done your studies, you go to one of the big companies and you move up and up and up, and then your parents are proud of you. Yeah. But I think that's not anymore what parents will be proud of you in the future, because if you choose this old-fashioned way, you may be one day, you may be out of job. I will tell you a very personal story. I had once in my life, only once, I was so devoted to the World Economic Forum, only once I was tempted, I was offered a great job. And in a very big, at the leading level of a very big company. And I was very attracted, but the company in the meantime does not anymore exist. And that will happen to many companies. So prepare yourself for a career where you have flexibility and where you take it as a new normal, that you may have to change your job 3 or 4 times or 5 times during your lifetime. Yeah. But this means also, in order to do so, that you have to upgrade yourself continually. Continued education, curiosity for what's happening is absolutely key.
그 제4차 산업혁명 이후에 우리 사회가 경제적 자본보다는 다른 사회적 자산이 더 많이 필요하고 중요하고, 거기에 대해서 특히 diversity라든가 flexibility 이런 사회적 자산들을 많이 강조해 주셨는데, 한국 사회는 굉장히 flexible하고 다이나미즘이 아주 잘 형성되어 있고 어댑테이션 하는 그런 이제 성격들을 잘 갖추고 있어서, 그거는 제4차 산업혁명에 잘 적응할 수 있는 우리 사회의 굉장히 좋은 자산이라고 생각이 드는데요. 또 한편으로는 강조하셨던 다이버시티 같은 측면에서 보자면 우리는 다양성을 존중하는 문화는 좀 부족한 편이고, 또 신뢰, 트러스트 같은 것들이 잘 형성되어 있지 않은 편이어서, 이런 이제 변화들이 우리 사회가 어떻게 제4차 산업에 잘 적응할 수 있을지 우리 사회가 고민해야 될 그런 문제가 아닌가 생각이 듭니다.
The fourth industrial revolution will certainly better adapted by countries which are not aging, which have a young generation. And by the way, if I look at some developing areas like the ASEAN countries and so on, countries which a large proportion of young people, they will benefit very much of this fourth industrial revolution because young people are much more adaptive, older people are much more defensive. I give you one example. When we had in Europe the Brexit decision, referendum, it's a question whether England should leave the European Union or not. There was a very small majority of people to leave the Union. But if you examine what was the reason, it was a fear about the future. Let's be our own little country again, and we will have a better future. But the young generation was not in favor of Brexit. They had a completely different opinion. So young people are much more adventurous, have a higher curiosity, higher flexibility. But I know Korea is a aging society. Yeah. It has the lowest fertility rate in the world. I think Korea will have to reflect very much on the question of immigration. Yeah. Even Germany, which is also a aging country, but with the refugees now, I think there is a big opportunity for the country to create a higher degree of diversity. And I would like to come back to gender parity, and I never criticize a country, I just take facts. In our and we have also a research report where we look in different ways at gender parity of all countries in the world. And Korea is in the second half of the countries. So a lot can be done. Yep. And here, I think it's not so much only to have half of the people or 1/3 of the people in the leadership team to be women, or to have 1/3 or half of parliamentarians to be female. I think what is very important is to introduce female qualities. It's not so much a question just of gender. It's a question of male and female qualities. And if you look at the fourth industrial revolution, I think we need female qualities even more, because women usually are more creative. That's a fact. Second, when we look at the job structure of the future, we have a robotized industry, so there will be fewer jobs in industry. So we have to think, where are the jobs for the future coming from? And I think those jobs, to counterbalance the robotization, we have to humanize the world. We have to humanize our robotized world, which means caring for the older people, caring in our daily lives becomes a much more important factor again, as a countervailing force to a more technical world, to a world more dominated by artificial intelligence. So again, the female element is very, very important. So diversity is important. And I think I come back to something I said already. It starts with the mindset of each individual. And I think it's fantastic to have you all here to talk about this issue, because it shows that you want to adapt your mindset and to tune in to the future.
듣다 보니 이제 궁금해졌는데 제4차 산업혁명이 불평등과 양극화를 더 심각하게 만들까요? 아니면 완화하는 방식으로 발전하게 될까요? 예를 들면 기술을 잘 알고 있는 사람과 그렇지 않은 사람 사이의 격차가 더 벌어질 수도 있을 것 같고요. 이 경제적 불평등, 양극화 이런 문제들이 우리 사회에 굉장히 중요한 이슈인데.
Yeah. No, there's one big challenge. When we look at the future, we will have a world where people will be employed if they have very high skills. You need people in KAIST, you need, let's say, really highly qualified people in the fourth industrial revolution, the talents, the drivers of the revolution. For all those tasks which even artificial intelligence cannot replace. And then you have the low skills jobs. You still have to do a lot of, I do not know, taking care of the elderly and so on, nurses and so on. But the problem with this fourth revolution is that it will affect particularly the middle class, the administrative jobs. So we know, for example, many jobs which you have in the administration, in the banking world, people who have to calculate insurance policies, or people in the legal profession, legal research, they will be replaced, or they could be replaced by artificial intelligence. You referred to Go, but I was last week with the person who is in charge of the Watson project, which is an IBM project. It's actually a big computer to do medical analysis. And the leader of this project told me that they had just recently a case of a young girl which was diagnosed and treated for cancer for over 7 years. And there was always a hope this little girl would overcome its disease, and then there was a setback. And then it was diagnosed by the Watson computer, or robot, however you want to call it, and immediately, and he prescribed the right treatment, and in the course of some weeks, the child had overcome its illness. Apparently, this Watson robot is able to better diagnose if you have a cancer and better to prescribe what should be done than any doctor in the world. So we will have this will certainly also lead to a complete restructuring of the medical field, because the analysis and so on, and then we have big data, the capabilities will become better and better because there's more and more big data around. So to come back to your question, what we have is some kind of a holing out of the middle class. And from a point of view of society, let's face, the middle class is the pillar of a democratic system. So we do not have yet solutions. One solution is to make sure that everybody can move upwards and can have the skills which are needed. But this is a very serious concern. And I just may add here, we had in Switzerland, in Switzerland you have what we call a referendum a democracy where people can ask for a vote. So we had a very activist group asking for a governmental system which would have provided every citizen with a guaranteed income. And it was rejected with a quite substantial majority. But maybe in 10, 20 years, we will need such a system because wealth will be reduced, mainly in a robotized way. So there will be not enough work for everybody. So we have to see how we take care of those people who will definitively will be exposed to negative consequences of this whole restructuring of work.
그 슈밥 회장께 그 리더십에 대해서 물어보지 않을 수 없을 것 같습니다. 그 우리가 전 세계 매년 1월에 벌어지는 다보스 포럼에 주목하는 이유는 글로벌 이슈를 던지고 그리고 세계 각 나라의 정상들이 모여서 그 글로벌 이슈에 대해서 얘기하고 또 뭐 구글이나 페이스북 또 바이두, 텐센트, 알리바바 같은 각 최전선에 있는 기업들의 리더들이 와서 자신들이 이제 펼치는 비전들을 보여주는데요. 그러면 이제 굉장히 많은 각 나라의 또 각 회사들의 리더들과 많은 커뮤니케이션을 했을 것 같습니다. 그래서 제4차 산업혁명 시대를 각 리더들이 어떻게 준비하고 있는지 들어보시고 혹시 굉장히 좋았던 리더십이 있었는지 저희한테 좀 공유를 해주시면 우리나라에 있는 중요한 리더들이 굉장히 좋은 참고가 될 것 같습니다.
Yes, it's an interesting question because when I was a university professor, in addition to building up the World Economic Forum, I had to teach leadership. And of course, there are thousands of books which tell you how to be a good leader. I have probably met every leader in the world in the last 20, 30 years. And I have a very simple answer. A leader, to be really a leader, he has to have just four things: brains, soul, heart, and good nerves. Let me explain. If you want to be a good leader, you have to be a professional. You have to excel in what you are doing. You cannot be just average. And this means brains. But that's not enough. You have to have a vision. You have to have values which show you the way. You have to have a compass built into yourself, which shows you your objectives, your direction. So that's the soul. But then you need the heart. You have to do with passion what you are doing. If you are not passionate, you may not show you're passionate. I have seen leaders who were not very flamboyant, but who had a lot of passion in their heart. And that's important. And finally, the world today is so fast moving, so complex. You have really to have the good nerves to deal with a very complex situation where you do not have always the answers to every question you may have. It's a very fluid situation. So, brains, soul, heart, and good nerves. Now you may ask me, who is such a leader? I have not met too many of those. But for me, some of the leaders who really combined those four distinguishing characteristics were definitively Mandela, Lee Kuan Yew, and so many whom you would not know. I mean, there are many people who have those four dimensions but are not worldwide known. But those two, I would say, corresponded best to those four criteria. And I think this type of leadership is needed not only in governments. You have to have those four ingredients. Very important, by the way, in governments is the direction, the compass, because we have a tendency in governmental leaders not to act on the basis of a compass, but to act on the basis of a radar system, which means you determine your direction by sending out signals, and then you adapt your direction related to what you hear from the people. That's, in my opinion, not a leader. A leader must know, he must listen to the people, but he must know what direction he has to take, what values he has to stand for. And by the way, this is the reason why we have chosen for the theme of our next annual meeting in Davos, responsive and responsible leadership. We need again more leadership in the world, but leadership has to be responsive to the people whom they lead. They have to be accountable to the people, and it's not enough to be elected every 4 years and then to stand again. You have to be permanently reactive, responsive, but you have also to be responsible. It's not just enough to be responsive. You have to know how you combine the expectations of the people to lead with what you personally feel is important to be done.
뭐 이런저런 얘기를 듣다 보니 벌써 이제 1시간이 다 지났습니다. 그래서 뭐 마지막 한 질문 정도 할 시간이 남아 있는 것 같은데요. 좀 편한 가벼운 질문을 드리자면 그 제4차 산업혁명을 위해서 클라우스 슈밥 회장은 어떤 준비를 하고 계신지, 그리고 만약 자제분에게 제4차 산업혁명 시대를 위해서 이런 걸 한번 준비해봐라 라고 어드바이스를 한다면 어떤 어드바이스를 할 건지, 만약 손자, 손녀가 있다면 그들에게 제4차 산업혁명 시대를 위해서 너는 이런 거를 해라, 어떤 어드바이스를 할 것인지 한번 얘기해 주시죠.
I have 2 grandchildren, but they are still too small to give some advice. And when they are more grown up, I don't know whether they accept advice from the grandfather. But my advice would be, the world is full of opportunities. Of course, it's also full of risks. Look much more at the opportunities than at the risks. When I was professor and I was teaching business strategy, I remember I had a case which shows when you look at when you analyze what a company or what you as individuals should do, you have the outside situation which has opportunities and risks. And then you have yourself, and you feel you have strengths, like Korea has certain strengths, but also certain weaknesses. And the research shows that those companies, and probably also people, who focus much more on the positive side, and who think much more, how can I exploit the opportunities which are given to me? How can I use my strengths? Are much more successful compared to the people who always are preoccupied only, how can I protect myself against the risks, and how can I eliminate my weaknesses? So it's mainly a matter of attitude. And I think what I would tell my grandchildren is concentrate on the opportunities, embrace the opportunities, and the world is fantastic. I mean, we should not forget, when I look back the 30 years now, or the 40 years, more than 40 years, since I have created the World Economic Forum, we have made tremendous progress. More people, no, when I created the forum in 71, we had 4 billion people, 2 billion people were living in poverty. Today we are 7 billion people. A little bit over 1 billion people is living in poverty. It's still a scandal. But what progress made? We live longer. We have a much richer life. Just imagine a life without iPhone, without all those new technological devices which allow us to communicate much easier. We can reach every corner of the world in less than 1 day. So many new opportunities. So let's embrace the future. But one last advice, be curious, be open. That would be my advice to my grandchildren. And maybe a last advice, and it may sound a little bit, how shall I say, strange, but it's my own personal experience. We are living in a world which is very challenging, even if we look only at opportunities, so many opportunities. Cultivate your fitness. You have to be fit for the world. It's a competitive world. It's an interesting world, but it's a competitive world. And for me personally, and that would be my advice, don't lose energy with too marginal matters. So focus on what is essential. And in order to do so, cultivate your fitness.
우리 사회는 올해 초에 알파고와 이세돌의 세계 대결 덕분에 인공지능이 굉장히 발달할 미래 사회에 우리가 어떤 경험을 하게 될지 굉장히 안전한 방식으로 경험을 했습니다. 그리고 그런 미래를 좀 대비할 그런 시간도 좀 생겼고요. 또 오늘 이 클라우스 슈밥 회장님과 이야기를 나누다 보니까 제4차 산업혁명이 도래할, 또 이미 도래했을지도 모르는 이 시대를 어떻게 우리가 살아가야 되는지 굉장히 진지하게 고민하는 시간을 갖게 된 것 같습니다. 여기 계신 여러분들이 기술이 굉장히 발전하고 그것이 비즈니스 영역을 넘어서서 우리 사회 전반에 굉장히 큰 변화를 야기할 거라고 생각이 드는데, 그런 시대에 우리는 어떻게 살아가야 될지, 또 나의 가치, 사회적 가치는 무엇이고 우리 사회에 어떤 방식으로 기여해야 되는지, 이런 것들을 좀 생각해보는 좋은 시간이 되셨으면 좋겠습니다. 제가 사실은 뭐 미리 질문 같은 거 하나도 드리지 않았고요. 그리고 생각한 키워드들만 적어놨는데 막상 이야기를 듣다 보니까 뭐 제가 적어둔 키워드와는 전혀 상관없는 또 대화로 계속 이어졌는데, 여러분들에게도 좀 유익한 대화였기를 바랍니다. 좋은 말씀을 해주신 클라우스 슈밥 회장님께 진심으로 감사드리고요. 경청해 주신 모든 분들께 감사드립니다. 마무리하겠습니다.